Okay guys, so we're at the step where we're ready to start mixing colors and that hopefully will match the ones in the original. Sometimes you're not going to get it perfectly matched, but the idea is you want to be inspired by this color palette and inspired by the shapes and things that you see in this image and continue them outwards. And at the end of the day, it's a little bit off, it's okay? But you're going to have to utilize your knowledge of mixing colors and everything that we discussed during our color theory unit a few days ago, where we practiced mixing colors and creating new colors. We practiced creating tints, which are lighter versions of color by adding white, tones, which are less bright or duller versions of a color by adding a little bit of gray to the color, or shades, creating those darker colors that almost pull on a black, okay, by adding some black to our original pigment. Okay, so if you don't remember, you can look back into your sketchbook. Okay, and you should have this to reference, right? Where you took a color and you painted the first part of your chart using the color straight out of the tube. This is 100% saturated, and then we desaturated the color by adding white to it and lightening it. We can create new hues like pink and sky blue and light green and so on, a lot softer colors by lightening colors. When you're looking at your painting and you see colors being lightened, okay, you can try to mix that color and add a little white to it to lighten it where it looks like it's too dark of a match. Okay, but sometimes your color just might still be too bright and cheery in comparison to the color that's in the painting. So you may have to not only lighten it, but you may also have to dull it down a bit. And we know that we can do that to any color, right, by adding gray to it. So not only are you mixing white into your color, but you're adding a touch of black. You want to gray it out a little bit. Creating a desaturated tone of something does not mean it's getting darker, okay? It's just getting less bright and less saturated. Whereas when you're creating a shade of a color by adding black to it, you're sticking to that color, but it's actually getting deeper and darker, okay? So I would probably need to shade my colors to get these deep, rich shadow areas. But in here, I may want to just dull down some of my blues by adding a little bit of gray to them. So remember the difference between tinting something and toning it, okay? Also, I may not have a color in my paint set that is the perfect match for the colors that I see in my sample here, okay? So you do have an array of colors in your kit. Unlike when we did our color wheel, you can go ahead and use them straight out of the tube. You don't have to mix all of your colors from scratch using the primaries. But in some cases, you may want to, okay? In some cases, you may need kind of a unique color that you can't get with a straight out of the tube color. So maybe you want to reference your complementary color charts again and see if you need like an earthy bluish color, right? Maybe in one of your images, you have something that is a little bit more earthy, where you need like a teal, for instance, and your blues are looking too blue, and you just need to figure out how to create that warmer glow. And the answer might be mixing a little bit of yellow or mixing a little bit of orange into it to get that shade, right? Or that hue. And then you can control the shade of it by tinting it, toning it, and shading it with black or gray or white, okay? So this is the point where we're at. I'm going to go ahead and kind of analyze my image and figure out what I want to tackle first. You always want to do background to foreground. So think, what is the furthest background part of this image that I could eventually layer up other parts onto? I'm probably going to guess the sky, the background sky. It's like a really, really faint blue, almost a white in my picture, and then it slowly builds up gradually to kind of a turquoise green blue or blue green. It always starts with the primary, blue green, and then it kind of goes into a rich royal blue color. So I might map in my sky first. What I want everybody to do is just pick one part of the picture to tackle for today, okay? And then revisit the picture and tackle another part. For instance, I'm going to work on the sky, so I may shade in my background sky going from a glowy yellow to a very pale blue to a turquoise to a blue, kind of ignoring my clouds for now on. And then later on, I will use my oranges and reds and violets and revisit these clouds. It's all about layering, okay? So you want to go to the background and then layer up all of the details as you go. Acrylic is, again, it's not a paint that stays wet for a very, very long time. When you squeeze it out of the tube, you could probably work with it somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes before it starts to really dry up, okay? But it does dry, and once it's dry, you can layer other colors on top quite easily, okay? Yesterday, when I had the other group with me, I decided to do this one as my exemplar. So again, I glued it on, I did my sketch of my extension, I went over my sketch with my burnt umber to do an underpainting, and I decided to just tackle the sky yesterday. Now that it dried, I feel like I could have gone a little lighter with the sky, okay? But in general, I tried to make kind of a gloomy sky made up of patches of colors that kind of were inspired by the dusty, dark colors in the original image here, okay? I might go back now and do another layer to kind of lighten it up, but I'm going to have to do a lighter wash over the whole thing, okay? So again, a small area might take you a lot more time than you think it will, because it's going to be a lot of trial and error. You might mix the color and then test it out and realize it's way too dark or way too light. Then you might have to go back to your palette and play around with altering that color, mixing it, remixing it, okay? The idea is that this project should feel like a challenge, okay? It's not just paint by numbers. We've already learned how to color in grade school. The step that we're taking further here is challenging ourselves to now not only color in with color, but add color that is mixed properly, right? And that achieves the look that we want it to achieve by being the correct shade and being the correct color combination and so on, okay? So again, you're analyzing not only the shapes in the picture, but you're analyzing the palette in the picture. You're going to try to mimic it as closely as possible, okay? In hopes to camouflage this later on. So I, again, will start with my sky. You pick what part of your image you may want to begin with. Usually the sky is a safe bet because, again, the sky is definitely a background bit, and that has other things layered on top of it. Okay, if you want to go into, for instance, the landscape, the land portion of it, you may start with the mountains that are furthest in the background or the trees that are furthest in the background, and then kind of work towards the other parts. Now that I'm done the sky here, I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play around with mixing my oranges to do the background hills and maybe the trail. And then after I'm done that, the next day I might revisit the snowy area, okay? So again, baby steps. Don't be overwhelmed and tackle mixing all of the colors at once, okay? When you squeeze out the colors onto your plate, they're only going to last, again, max 20 minutes, half an hour. So you want to work on one area at a time. Okay, so for this, I need white.